Hello, everyone. Nick Ortiz here, coming at you live to talk about Social Security disability claims. I'm here today, as we're trying to do every Monday, to talk about Social Security disability claims. And today's video could be really short and summarized in one sentence, but I'm going to go into a little bit of detail of why and what happens when people talk over the judge. But the topic of the day today is do not talk over the judge. And I know this seems super obvious, but I think people would be really shocked if they were to just sit and listen to the audio of a typical hearing. And every hearing is recorded by the Social Security Administration. There is an official recording, so they ask that people do not record the proceeding, as it is confidential in nature. And if one were to try to do their own recording, then they would need the permission of the judge. But there's really no need to do your own recording because there is an official recording by the Social Security Administration, and it's available upon request. I mean, we as representatives have access to the full audio recording after the hearing is completed, and we could download it at any time. So if you have a representative, you can ask for a copy of that. But there is an official recording. But my point here again is I think people would be really surprised about the interaction between a judge and a claimant. I mean, these hearings are designed to be non-adversarial. And what that means is that it's not like you and your representative against the judge. It's not like the judge is supposed to be your adversary and ask you questions and try to knock down your case. Instead, it's supposed to be a proceeding whereby the judge asks questions, gathers information, and makes a determination. Now, sometimes, unfortunately, it can have an adversarial tone, either because the judges sometimes do have a little bit of an adversarial tone. The claimants can get really kind of amped up, let's call it, and fired up, and it can become adversarial, and you definitely don't want it to get to that level. But one thing that can complicate things is talking over each other. And oftentimes in today's modern day, when people are communicating, they may have a tendency to talk over each other. And the point of today's hearing is, or today's video is, do not let that happen in your hearing. When the judge is talking, you stop talking and don't answer until the judge is done with his or her question. Now, why does this happen? I mean, I have a couple of theories. Number one is, I think, nerves. I think people are really nervous, and they kind of see where the judge is going with something, and they jump in and they want to answer it before the question's even done. Again, you might not even know where the judge is going with the question, so it's inappropriate and it's kind of rude, right? And we know that you shouldn't talk over someone when they're speaking because it is rude, and it's particularly rude in a Social Security disability hearing. Now, I know that people are super eager too. That's another reason why people jump in, is they've waited so long for this hearing. It's been a year or 2 years. I'm so eager that they are willing to cut off the judge. And maybe they don't even realize when I say they're willing to. They either willingly or maybe inadvertently cut off the judge. But do not let that eagerness of telling your story interfere with your ability to communicate effectively with the judge. Because what's the reality? I mean, how do most of us react when we're cut off? You know that most of us aren't happy about it, right? Most of us, like when you're cut off during conversation, kind of annoyed sometimes. And the more that it happens, the more annoyed you get. And at the end of the day, the judge is by definition the decision maker. And what that means is they're the ones going to decide the case, so you don't want to irritate this person. You don't. It's a difficult enough process. You do not want to irritate the judge. So it is super important to let the judge complete his or her question before you answer it. Now, if you are a client of mine, and you go through a hearing with me, you would see that when I do the questions, I follow up the questions from the judge. So I will oftentimes ask my own clients questions. And when the client answers, I let them complete their answer. Like I do not cut them off. I don't jump in. There's not a lot of overlapping communication. But, and this is an important thing to consider, there are times where I do. And if a client has ever been cut off by me, it's because I'm actually trying to cut off what might be an extraordinarily long answer. So I do try to give people some room, but I may jump in if I feel like the client's going on a little bit too long. So if I do start overlapping in terms of my questions with their answers, it's because I am trying to move the conversation along, because I identify that maybe we've gone on too long with a particular topic, and or I can see that the judge is kind of done with that. So there may be times where I do that, but it is with full intention of wanting to keep the proceeding moving. But otherwise, I'm a listener, and we try to let people complete their thought before asking the next question. So that's the topic of the day today. A lot of these things are, I mean, I know they seem super obvious, but again, you would be surprised. If you listen to 100 hearing tapes, you would hear so many people talking over the judge and violating basic principles that we put forth like this. That seems so obvious on its face, but it can become problematic during the course of the hearing. So that's the topic of the day today. So thank you for your participation. Thanks for coming on, and thank you all for your participation in the group. I think that there's been a lot of good questions and a lot of good information flowing through the group. So continue to ask your questions, and you never know, some of your questions might become the topic of the next video. All right, well, you all have a really great day. I'll talk to you next week.